We are going to use our last chunk of time here to have kind of an interactive discussion looking at the past year of RAFT, getting your feedbacks about moving forward. But I did want to reiterate again what Tanya mentioned at the beginning. We're extremely grateful to the Department of Environmental Quality Coastal Zone Management Project and the Virginia Environmental Endowment for funding the RAFT and this past year of implementation. We do have an evaluation that we'll share at the end, and I'll pop that link in the chat. But are especially privileged to be able to offer an additional 6 months of facilitation support with an additional grant from the Virginia Environmental Endowment through October. And so I did just want to summarize. Implementation will look a little different moving forward. We'll be supporting the cities and RAFT implementation teams on some specific goals. In Petersburg, those will be priorities around developing landscape plans and green infrastructure. So planning to continue to work and advance the products coming out of Karen Firehawk's class and next steps with the Green Infrastructure Center, and working with other partners to plan a green infrastructure workshop or symposium later this fall. The second goal priority for Petersburg will be connecting people to goods and service through transit and broadband, advancing Bev Wilson's broadband mapping work, and also working on the trolley transit project, trying to host a workshop and get some route planning for that organized. In Hopewell, the resilience priorities will include addressing social determinants of health and advancing those next steps coming out of Leslie Hoagland's collaboration with the city, as well as updating the comprehensive plan and working with Kelly and city staff there on that comprehensive planning language and update process. So with that free view of where we're headed in the next 6 months, our process will be customized to meet the needs of each locality. We'll shift to our open discussion around RAFT reflections and next steps, and I'll kick it back to Jessica. We'll get a link to the Google Doc in the chat here in a second, as well as the evaluation. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Sierra. Yeah, so we'd really love to ask a few questions in the next 10 minutes and make sure that we get you all out on time at 3:30. But there is a Google Doc that has been created that also allows you to enter your responses and feedback through that document. Sierra's posting a link to that document. I think, Jesse, if you could pull up a screen share of that document too, just so everyone can see what that looks like, that would be great. So as I'm moving through these questions, please, again, feel free to unmute your mic and join in the conversation. Enter your comments via the chat, or go ahead and leave your comments in the Google Doc as well. So the first question we have is, how has the implementation process been most useful for the work you are doing? And what specific implementation activities or discussions have been particularly helpful in prompting action or growth for your locality? I think our presentations today gave a lot of the background and activities that have been happening, and gives everyone kind of some food for thought to think through possibilities for the future. But we're also wondering if there were specific activities since implementation started that have been useful to your localities. Would anyone like to get the conversation started? And I welcome feedback from other RAFT team members too, who've been working so closely with the localities as well. Might have insights.
Sure. I guess one thing that I noted that's been super helpful for implementation is just those partnerships that we have, especially with UVA, working with the students, getting those ideas, kind of helping us think outside the box of what might be typical and most cost effective, and figuring out alternative ways to move forward that maybe are a greater benefit to the economy and the environment than what the previous proposed solution may have been.
Great. Thanks, Naomi. Thanks so much. Do others have thoughts to add? Vince, yeah, I see you raise your hand.
Sorry, I'm unmuting myself. Hi,
That's all
thanks.
right.
I had questions that understand that I'm coming on after the first year implementation, but I have questions to follow up about Petersburg in the second year of implementation. Uh, Broadband, green infrastructure, I understand that, but previous speaker, I forget because I'm horrible with names. I apologize, but uh, food desert was the word that you would specifically use, and food is a definite social determinant of health. So I'm curious about, although that I didn't hear that make the first and second priorities. Um, Sierra, is that something that we're going to just foundationally implement in the second year, or are we not worried about food at all in the second year? Thanks for letting me ask.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of course.
great question. So the additional implementation support is focused on some of the specific goals, but the RAFT process will do everything we can to fold sort of adjacent parallel activities into those goals moving forward. And then another piece of context is we are building a RAFT alumni network where we share opportunities, educational funding opportunities to localities. So that's another space for Petersburg and Hopewell, as well as others, to stay engaged, especially for new resilience priorities that emerge, or those on the checklist we won't be focusing as closely on in the next 6 months. I hope that answers your question. And also a goal is to plug RAFT activities into future collaborations, coordinations with regional partners and others that will be able to continue to advance them beyond formal RAFT implementation time.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Thanks. And Naomi, I saw you, or did you have anything to add?
Sure, yeah. And I was going to mention, just like Sierra said, how we are focusing on some key goals, but we're also seeing how we can implement other items through those goals. So just like she was talking about, we have infrastructure goals and transportation goals. So the opportunity potentially for a trolley project that could get people access to green space as well as access to grocery stores is still something that we're in active conversations about.
Great. Thank you so much.
I think for
yeah.
Hopewell, I'll just
Kelly, yeah.
chime in from Hopewell's perspective. I think we had less success, it sounds like, than Petersburg had in terms of actual results from the RAFT process. I know that we had hoped to have a really usable layer for to feed into our transportation comprehensive plan element, and that the product that AI generated was not quite what usable at this point. So there was a lot of lessons learned, and through the process, it was nice to be able to connect and try to direct resources that ODU brought to us, and try to make those connections as well to other departments that weren't directly involved in the RAFT process. I think there's been some conversations between CBF and the stormwater groups, and then with Leslie Hoagland's work, being able to make those connections to the Healthy Families Department, who is taking over One Hopewell, which was set up originally to try to tackle some of the social determinants of health. So I think for us, we're really looking forward to seeing the outcomes of Dr. Hoagland's work and hoping that that will be a positive implementation step to come out of RAFT.
Great. Thanks so much, Kelly. And this is actually a good segue to the next question, which is about challenges. So what have been the biggest challenges of implementing resilience priorities that have been identified over the past year in Hopewell and Petersburg?
Yeah, I mean, from Hopewell's perspective, again, I think that was really the focus of what I touched on, at least, was the lack of assets and resources at the table to be able to undertake the things that the first group of folks that set those goals identified, and not having a clear action plan of who was going to support those. So it really felt like in each of those meetings that we had, that they were kind of like, all right, planning department, which is essentially me, tackle all of these things. And so while we do that, we have been working to through those goals. It's not necessarily through or because of RAFT. So we worked with Crater PDC to do a tree canopy grant, and we're successful. And so we'll be implementing that over the next year. We've applied and are hopeful to be able to work with the Green Infrastructure Center to be able to do something similar to what they're doing in Petersburg in terms of creating a clear green infrastructure plan, so that we're not tackling green infrastructure so haphazardly, which is one of the things that we're struggling with right now with the tree canopy plan and planting, is where we have this money now, where are we going to plant? And so we're trying to, we are actively identifying other resources to be able to help with some of these things, but it's not necessarily because of RAFT.
Yeah, and each locality has such specific challenges to what you're working with and resources available. So
Yeah.
what you're saying, I think, makes sense.
And I think a big thing for us is that staff turnover. We had the marina is being led by the economic development director. He is new as of the last year. We've had an entirely new staff in public works and stormwater in the last year. I'm been here about a year, so that staff turnover means that everyone's kind of getting up to speed and trying to figure out what their role is and how we can work together. I don't think that that they don't want to be at the table with RAFT, but that's not necessarily anyone's top priority here.
Great. Thanks, Kelly. Does anyone from Petersburg or others from Hopewell have anything to add on that question? And again, feel free to respond in the chat or in the Google Doc. Just for the sake of time, I'll go ahead and move on to the third question, which is, and this kind of speaks back to what Kelly was saying, but what resources are needed perhaps to meet your remaining goals and objectives, and how can the RAFT team support your next steps as well? And again, please feel free to join in the conversation.
I just wanted to add
Sarah,
briefly, because I think this is something the RAFT team has seen in other regions and rounds of localities, sort of staff turnover and capacity challenges, and wanting to think creatively about how we create that institutional knowledge and keep resources accessible to staff as they come on board at locality. So welcome thoughts. I know we're moving to the next question, but that's related to resources needed. If there's sort of formats or processes that can be put in place to kind of respond to your comment, Kelly. And I know there's been turnover as well in Petersburg during the RAFT process. So welcome thoughts there as well about sort of acknowledging that challenge and ideas for ways.
Yeah, absolutely, it has been, yes.
Thanks,
I think
Daryl.
one of the things that would have helped early on in this process is to have a comprehensive list of any grants or service providers or actors that are working in this arena. So we weren't aware of that green infrastructure grant until through the Green Infrastructure Center until very recently, until we applied this spring. And I think that would have been really helpful for us to have had access to that over the last year. ODU did start sending us some grants throughout the RAFT process, and we were thankful for that. but it kind of came off as one-off emails, and it might have been nice or helpful at the start of the process to identify all of those folks that are working in the region and might want to get connected through this process or have something to offer. And that way it might have become less of like a one-off, because really our RAFT kind of became presentations by these different groups about things that they could offer Hopewell. And it would have been nice to know who was presenting so that the right person, like the right departments could have been in the room to hear that, or to be able to share that and try to advocate for them to come and hear about these resources.
Great, thank you so much. That's very helpful. Do others have anything
I
to add
can
about resources? Yeah.
I can speak from a PDC perspective, and this I guess also sort of ties into challenges too. And I know that we do have friends from DCR and DEQ on here, and I know that none of this is your fault. But there is just a lot of hurry up and wait. We have been waiting almost 5 months now for some contracts to come in, and we can't really start work until we have those contracts. So there's just a lot of kind of waiting around, and we can't really do all that much until we have full scopes and executed contracts that we can sign. So I don't know how RAFT could specifically support us with that, but like, if y'all want to help us hound the state agencies, I know that y'all are just as strapped for capacity as we are, and this is not an at to any of our DCR or DEQ friends on the call specifically. But we're just kind of in a holding pattern for a lot of this stuff, which is frustrating especially for somebody like me who's very like get up and go, chomping at the bit. I want to move, but I have to wait around.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, Kit. And Shireen offered to in the chat that it's a problem with a lot of the funding sources more generally. So mentioning NIFWIF as being delayed. So I think that it sounds as though there are a lot of shared challenges between the localities, and I think it sounds as though the RAFT team has probably seen these same challenges and maybe other iterations of the implementation process in other areas. So just to kind of wrap up this portion of the workshop, though, I think it sounds as though the communication between the stakeholders through the implementation process is really important. So actually getting to hear one another, but also thinking about, I think something that's coming up as well is this intersection in resiliency goals, thinking about like food security, transportation, infrastructure, these areas that aren't mutually exclusive, that are really important to think about how they're intersecting and making sense together, might be important moving on. And then also thinking about what Kelly, you had mentioned, looking at ways that the RAFT can very practically provide some lists of grants, service providers upfront, moving forward in these next months might be a really helpful way to just practically get you started on the next part. So I'll open that up to the rest of the RAFT team. If anyone has anything else to add, feel free to chime in. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica, and a gratitude to everyone that spoke up about some of the broader challenges and then concrete things that RAFT can help facilitate, especially with the 6 months we have kind of doing active implementation around funding and providing some of that connective work or coordination with state agencies. And then we have that time, the additional 6 months, to also kind of debrief and look at institutional knowledge and making sure that kind of products and resources and relationships are maintained post-RAFT. So just wanted to also invite folks, the Google Doc will stay available if you want to add additional thoughts or reflections there. I've also posted a link to our evaluation, just acknowledging we are at time and folks might have to hop off, but want to open it up again for other folks on the RAFT team or other attendees to share any thoughts or reflections about what we've heard from attendees and localities and implementation team members mentioned today.
Sierra, one other thing for question 2, as far as the challenges, and Naomi may be able to confirm this. We've had also some issues in terms of tree plantings, as far as having opportunities to get funding and similar to what Hopewell has, and not necessarily, we're not necessarily at the point where we're knowing, where to plant. And so GIC has, of course, been helpful to us too. So you might add us to that second, part of that second entry as well.
Thanks, Daryl. Appreciate you raising that and sort of highlighting again sort of the tension of wanting to do implementation, but inform it with plans and the work to get those plans, that comprehensive planning funded first, and the timeline it takes to do that. So thanks for raising that, and we can add that to the document. Any other reflections from other RAFT team members or participants today? And again, welcome feedback in that thread, the Google Doc, the evaluation, and in our continued engagement over the next 6 months.
Sierra, I just wanted to add that several people have mentioned an interest in attending level 1, the Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professional Program training in Richmond, and we now have it scheduled for September 11th and 12th. There's a 50% off discount coupon right now, and we provided you with a flyer that you can give out to people. But it is also considered resilience training and can be funded through the CFPF, Community Flood Preparedness Fund. So anyway, I just wanted to let you guys know about that as well. And then the other thing is, I think I saw that you have Ross Weaver scheduled to speak to at a meeting. Or possibly. Ross Weaver is a former Wetlands Watch employee who is now with the NIFWIF, with the National Resilience Fund. And Ross, several years ago, put together a list of all the different funding sources. And you can access that through Adapt VA, and or send me an email, and we'll or Savannah Newburn an email, and we can provide you with that as well. It may need updating, but some are still relevant, or most are still relevant funding sources for resilience work.
Thanks, Shireen. That's great. Yeah, love the Wetlands Watch resources, and would love to circle back with you to make sure we get that to Petersburg and Hopewell's implementation teams and city staff. And we will include with the summary from this too, the CBLP summer certificate program, because I know Daryl and some other folks, at least in Petersburg, were interested in that. So thanks for plugging that here, and we'll include that with the summary.
Yeah, Shireen, what was the do you remember, and I may have seen it already, do you remember what the contact hours equivalent for those courses are?
Oh, Shireen, you're muted, just so you know.
I think it's between 15 and 16 contact hours. Yeah. So if you're a certified stormwater manager or A&S inspector, you can also track those for contact hours as well. Also, certified urban nutrient managers get 8 credit hours, and that fills your 2-year requirement.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, if you would just codify that so we have that information as well. I got folks here, I got a couple inspectors here that would may want to take advantage of that, and they probably would want to know what the DEQ contact hour equivalent would be.
Yeah, I'll look back through some old emails.
Thanks, Shireen. Thanks, Daryl, for that connection. But I will close this out because we are over time. Thank you so much to everybody who presented from the locality, sharing your honest feedback, from our regional partners, the PDC, nonprofits in the region, and all of the faculty that contributed their time and student time through research and courses over the last year to support localities. Our team with the RAFT is looking forward to continuing to work with both cities for the next 6 months. We're very grateful again to the Virginia Environmental Endowment for continued facilitation to support, as well as the Department of Environmental Quality Coastal Zone Management Program that's made implementation possible.